Welcome back to my channel where I'll tell you what I would do differently if I was the creator of TV shows and movies. The episode begins with Archie arriving at Juvie. Jughead narrates this before a guard tells Archie that the warden wants to see him, and the warden tells him not to cause any trouble and they'll get along just fine. And then we see Fred Andrews at Pop's diner as he walks over and says Archie is fine, and that will play out the same. And then I'm going to add a scene with Betty as she wakes up a few days after the previous episode, and she's in the hospital, confused about what happened. And Polly tells her what happened and how she had a seizure, and the doctor says that he thinks it is just stress. Betty will ask if the twins are alright, and Polly will ask why wouldn't they be, and Betty would tell her what she saw the other night, and Polly would play it off. Betty then gets signed out of the hospital as she gets a call from Jughead and goes to meet him. Betty will then learn what Jughead saw that night and everything that happened with Dilton and Ben. And Jughead will describe how it's kind of a ritual. And then he will mention how Ben came to see him. Jughead will ask Betty to investigate this with him, and she will agree. And then we see Archie get thrown in his cell with Mad Dog. Archie tries to introduce himself, but Mad Dog ignores him, continuing to do his workout. Archie asked how long he's been in there, but Mad Dog still ignores him, just walking to his bed as he starts to read a book. Archie starts to say something, but then Mad Dog says that he had nice shoes and that he should keep them tied tight. And then we see Veronica arrive at school and run up to the principal, saying that she will step in as body president until Archie gets back. Then we'll have the scene with Cheryl, and that will cut to Archie as he steps into the field, walking over to the serpents. He will show them his tattoo, and then we will learn they will learn that he's actually not a serpent and he's just Jughead's pal. And then they ask him to stab a ghoulie, but he refuses and walks away. Polly is at a mystery location as a door opens and she steps inside. And then we cut to Betty and Jughead as they are going to Dr. Curdle's office, but they find out he is dead and it is now his son that took over. We then learn how Dilton dies and what the blue lips means. And then we see Archie playing guitar before a gang of ghoulies walks up and we learn that they was in the drag race. And then we cut to Archie on the floor after the attack. We then cut to Archie as he enters his cell before falling on his bed and passing out. The next day, we see Veronica as she enters or arrives at Juvie, and Archie walks in, sitting down across from her. Then we get the scene where he's acting like he was just working out and is sore from that, and the warden took his shoes, but of course we know what really happened. And then Archie will ask about school, and then we would cut to Betty as she's making a phone call to the coroner, and then of course we would meet Evelyn, and that conversation will be the same We would then have the same scene with Kevin and Moose before we cut to Betty as she's at Pops. Uh, when Cheryl walks in. Oh, sorry. This is Veronica, actually. We then cut to Veronica as she's at Pops when Cheryl walks in, and then we get that exact same conversation. And then we cut to Jughead as he goes to see Ben, and then we learn that he still hasn't woken up and is in a coma. And before they can get too much out of the mom, they get interrupted by Sheriff Mineta. We then get the same scene where we learn about the bunker. I am then going to add a scene where Polly gets a call about Betty and Jughead snooping around Ben's room, and then she will call FP Jones. We will then see Archie as he has that scene with Mad Dog, and then we would see Betty and Jughead arrive back at her house, and Jughead learns about the seizure, but of course it would be Polly, and the conversation would be different. We would then cut to see Reggie as he visits Archie, and we learn that Veronica is working to get his case looked at, and in my version it would just be Reggie because Veronica is working to do that. And then we would see Archie walk outside in his new shoes, and then we would see Archie tell them about playing football, and they would all eventually agree. We would then cut to Betty as she's in bed as Polly brings her a drink, and it will be different from. It will be similar in some ways to the actual scene, but different because it's Polly instead of her mom. But then Betty will still leave and go meet up with Jughead. Would get added scene where she would call him and they would meet up. We would then get the actual scene we got from the episode, and then we would see the Gargoyle King, and they would run away before we have them draw what they saw at Pop's Diner, and that will be the same. And then they will look at Dilton's map, and then Veronica got to see Archie, and she learns about the football game, and that will play out the same. She would go to talk to Cheryl for help, and that will be the same. And then we would get the scene with Kevin and Moose as they have that conversation at Pops, and that will also pretty much be the same. We would then see Mad Dog and Archie as he tells them about his life. He used to have visitors, and he hasn't got to see him for 2 years. Next month, he's getting transferred to an actual prison. And then we cut to Betty and Jughead as they find the bunker, and they go to search the bunker, and they find a picture of the Gargoyle King, and then they find the missing boy, and they explain that Dilton is dead. We would then cut to Archie as we see them starting the football game, and Cheryl arrived with Veronica and the rest of her cheerleaders, and they start their performance. And Hiram Laws shows up, all that will be the same. The football game happens. Hiram Laws shows up, and then they have a conversation where he straight tells her that she won't be able to see Archie after the day. Then they finish their performance, and then we get the scene with the ambush, and all that will be the same. Archie would then start to fight off the guards, and he will be able to knock out a few of them, before eventually they take him down. Then the warden would come see him and tells him he has been tapped, and one of the guards will also say that the riot killed Mad Dog, even though that there's no way because it wasn't right and he wasn't even there. And then I'm at a scene where the warden tells Veronica that she is now banned, and then I will have a scene with Jughead as he hears what happened to Archie and he will go to see him. And then we would have a scene with Cheryl, which will play out the same. And then we would have Jughead and Betty go talk to Ethel, and she will have a seizure. We see Archie get a visitor, and it's Veronica under a fake name. We then see the scene with Kevin and Moose, and then the warden meets up with Archie. And I mentioned this earlier, but he'd been tagged. I got lost on the script, but anyways, and then we would have the meeting with the secret, and then we would see Betty and Jughead at the hospital as they agree that they're still going to look into it. And then the scene will end with Ben sitting out on the window, and that scene will be the same as he jumps out. And that's where the episode ends, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace out.